One of the things that I think is really important to acknowledge for people who are really searching for the biz bestie relationship is first of all, it is a form of collaboration. Hi, Tonya.
Hi, Mary.
You're my friend.
I was like, it's business bestie time.
It's biz bestie time. And you and I were watching Danny Berman's chat that went up on the channel here last week. And we were like, we talk about collaborating all the time. So you and I hatched an idea, and we're going to kind of break it down for people and explain what we're doing here. But we thought it would be interesting for other people to have a chance to kind of be in the room with two people who have a lot of private conversation. Because I think the term biz bestie gets thrown around a lot, but you and I are really biz besties. Like,
Right.
I'm going to kind of set the stage here so everybody knows.
Yeah.
Okay. You and I met while coaching and running community and building
Mhm.
community for
Mhm.
a large coaching company. We met behind the scenes, and we have both been watching each other build the things that we build and going through all the ups and downs. We've ridden through COVID together. We've ridden through some wild launches, some of them ours, some of them other people's. When I say that you and I have burned the midnight oil together, I mean we have burned the 2 a.m. oil together.
And
It's
the
a
3 a.m. and the
and the
4
3 a.m. Yeah.
5 a.m. Yeah.
Getting up at 3, 4,
Yeah.
hair and makeup ready, being on the West Coast.
Never thought I'd have to have hair and makeup ready by 2:30 in the morning, but yeah, there we were.
Yeah, we have done a lot. So one of the things that I think is really important to acknowledge for people who are really searching for the biz bestie relationship is first of all, it is a form of collaboration. So we'll get into that.
Yeah.
But also we were chatting for a second before we hit record. It came up during Danny Berman's discussion about weight class, which is a term that gets thrown
Mhm.
around in collaborations. And weight class is the thing that we talk about when we say, like,
Yeah.
do they have like similar size lists, or do they have like similar kind of trajectory in business?
Mhm.
And the truth is, like, I feel like weight class is kind of like what you and I experienced together, which is the sustained momentum. Because I
Mhm.
have some people who have real big lists, and they kind of come and they kind of go, and they kind of
Yeah.
come and they kind of go.
Mhm.
And then I see some people who, are real small, and they're just constantly building, building, building. But you and I seem to build at sort of the same pace. We don't put down our businesses in a way where sometimes people will sort of like poop out, and they're like, I
Mhm.
can't do it, which is totally respectable. But it's hard to like biz buddy with somebody who's retired something for a couple of months, and they're just like
Yeah.
on vacation while you're building.
Mhm.
And you
Right.
and I just are like doing things, even if it's
Mhm.
background things that a lot of people aren't seeing, we're
Right.
still building. So
Mhm.
I feel like in terms of weight class, that's actually my relationship with you. Like, do you agree?
So I agree, and thank you. And I would also say, adding to weight class, similar measurements of success. So it's not just doing the things the same, right? Like I email week, but it's also being key on what are wins, right? So you and I are both people, the times we've worked together, the win is connection, right? I am a community minded person. You are really deep into community as well with your clients and the people you work with. And so it doesn't matter if I'm in the same stage of business, same revenue, same audience size as somebody else. If they're not interested in that kind of connection with their people, we're not a good fit. We're not in the right like weight class at all.
Yeah.
So I think that's a piece too that people forget. It's like, are we in it for the same reason? Do we have the same goals? Because what's happened to me, and I'll just jump into it. One example is somebody had reached out to me because I do a lot of live video. I love live video. It's like my favorite way to connect with individuals. And they wanted to do a live show together. Awesome. I am 100% into a live show. They were willing to host, they were willing to do all these things. Great. So I'm like, okay, block out the time, I'll show up. Well, a couple of times we're live together and we've got 2 viewers, and they're just like, oh, this isn't worth the time. This is a waste of time. This is such an investment of time and energy and space and blah, blah, blah. You know as well as I do, Mary, like most live shows, you've got a live audience of 2 because 80% of your views are going to come on replay. That's just how it works. But if you don't show up live and give it your best to those 2 people, or in my case, sometimes just me and my cell phone, right? You don't get anything because you don't have a replay to have 80% of your views come from.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's hard to be like, okay, so I'm excited. I'm like 100% in with you in this partnership. And then to find out what you think is valuable is not valuable to somebody else.
Yes. I think you and I have always matched on what we feel is valuable.
Mm-hmm.
And I also feel like we discovered that with each other just by being in the trenches together
Mm-hmm.
and having little debrief conversations in the spaces we were at, because we saw a lot of things happening around us and we were like, oh, you share the same values that I share.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when people are looking for the type of like peer masterminding feeling,
Mm-hmm.
I think that's like what they're looking for is the thing that you and I get together, which is just something that has grown over time. Like we were talking about time too this morning.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not something that you can artificially engineer. You can't gamify linear time.
No, you cannot.
No. And I don't care. My metaphysical people who are like, time's not linear. We're not having that conversation today. That's not today's conversation.
I'm a very linear person. We're working within the limits of my time.
Exactly. Yeah, so I think like that's a factor. And because of the linear time thing, you and I are going to experiment here. We're going to play around with trying to record Biz Buddy check-ins like about once a month or so that people can kind of see how the things we're focusing on are like growing and shifting and like the trends we notice. Because so what happens is usually on Sundays, I think I've noticed a trend.
Sundays are our days.
You're doing family mom stuff. I'm cleaning and doing home stuff. And we will on WhatsApp leave asynchronous voice notes and we call them like, it's a Mary podcast.
A private podcast.
Audio podcast. And they're not short voice messages for the most part. They are like hour, 20-minute, half hour. If you add up the little one.
Well, I was going to say, I think last week we both logged like 2 to 3 hours of voice memos to each other. Like I gave you like 2 hours and you gave me like 2 hours.
I think so. And so there's an investment there in wanting to share thoughts and information. Mm-hmm. And I've noticed too that like you're a very generous person with like, I have some observations that I've noticed. Sometimes I think we use the word feedback, but mostly we're like, you'll ask me really good questions. I think that's what it is. You ask me really good questions. You'll participate in my world. And then afterwards, I know I'm going to get a Tonya podcast. I'm going to get a voice note in my WhatsApp. And you're going to ask me, tell me how you felt about that. How did that go for you? And I love that you do that because it has helped me uncork some really sticky business problems this year where I was like, this isn't working, but this other thing is working. Mm-hmm. And I'm just wondering, like, how many spaces do you tend to get that from?
Like, did I receive that from?
How much do you give and receive? Like, obviously there's our space, but like, have you ever found a way to do it with anyone else before? Or are we sort of like breaking down the rest?
Well, I mean, we are definitely unicorns, by the way. We are totally unicorns. But there is one space I'm in where it's similar, but it's still not quite to the, like, I provide a lot of observation and insight, and there's like one individual in that space who will, what she'll do is she'll kind of repeat back, you know what I like about you, Tonya, is you always notice this thing or that thing, and which is helpful because part of what you're talking about, Mary, is the mirroring, right? So I see, I observe, I go, I have this thought about this. I have drawn my own conclusions, made my own assumptions. But now I'm curious. Like, I'm curious, like, did Mary see that? Does Mary like, is that a positive to Mary? Is it a negative to Mary? What's the shadow side of it? I love how you always talk about the light sides and the shadow sides of things. Right. And then and because we've known each other a long time, I can go and I can ask you. And
Yes.
usually I'm the person who's like, you don't have to tell me if you don't want to. And maybe you just want to answer this question for yourself, but here's what I'm curious about. And then when you respond, like, I feel like my world perspective gets so much bigger and more nuanced because of the conversations we have.
Same. Sometimes you'll say things on a voice note after I've asked you, like ping pong back a question, and hearing you think aloud through it,
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, oh, that thing. I
Mm-hmm.
love what you just said about that thing. Yeah, I think that there are people who are craving that right now. You and I both are community builders
Mm-hmm.
and support other people's communities and our own. And I'm having this like aha moment right now that I haven't really like articulated before. But I think people, when they're saying right now that they're looking for their group, some people are saying tribe. I know that that's not like the best term to use these days, but I think what people are really looking for is not necessarily the group to belong to. I think they're looking for the connection that gives them the reflection,
Mm-hmm.
the way you and I have found, and we
Yeah.
find it very satisfying. It's become a very safe space
Mm-hmm.
where we've talked about some pretty hard stuff.
Yeah.
Like I was real frustrated with some collaborations earlier in the year, and
Mm-hmm.
you really held space for me to talk through it. You reflected a lot of things back where I realized, you were the one who picked out that question is like the what do you call it? Not the, like the homework question, like it was like, oh my God, why is it so hard today? What did you call it?
Did I call it your qualifying question? Is it like the
Yes,
question
the
you need to ask
qualifying
yourself about
question.
potential
Yes.
collaborators? Yeah, your qualifying question.
And it was so good. And it's really stuck with me because I didn't realize that was such a huge value point for me. And then, you've been doing some things. Well, and then like I started, I
I
started
think you have
reflecting.
to tell people what the question is before we go too far.
Okay, okay. So the question was, it came up in the bundled mastermind and it came up
Mm-hmm.
naturally in discussion. I was not expecting it. It was completely
Mm-hmm.
organic. And what happened is some of the people who came in as guest experts were giving the advice that we hear very frequently and is not incorrect. You should hold out for like your absolute A plus plus best customers, charge what you're worth, don't do things you don't want to do.
Mm-hmm.
And my question in return, because I knew some of the audience that was attending
Yeah.
asynchronously, and I was like, well, that's kind of a privileged point because some
Mm-hmm.
people need to pay their bills. And sometimes when you have to pay your bills, you don't always get to choose everything you want to do. And you try to make it as aligned as you can. But sometimes you got to do a job because you need to take the paycheck.
Yeah.
And you and I both been in that situation before. We've both felt it before. And instead of engaging in the conversation, they just sort of like dug in their heels and like shut down. And that was
Mm-hmm.
when he WhatsApped me after. Like, what? What? How do you feel about that? And it really showed me that who I thought I would be collaborating
Mm-hmm.
this year was different.
Right. And so the qualifying question for you, right, is you're going to ask that question from every future collaborator. Like if somebody says, you know what, like I don't know how I'm going to pay rent next month, or you know what, like I've got enough groceries to get myself through the end of the month, but I don't quite know how we're going to manage food and basic needs next month. What would be your coaching advice to them? What would you say? And then based on their answer, you're going to decide, you're going to be able to know very clearly whether you've got alignment and values and ethics in terms of how we coach, how we consult with people or not. Because if their answer is, well, people find a way, they find money for the things that are important to them. Da, 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 da. Yes, that is true to a point, right? My children have had special needs. There was a time when I paid for private therapies. There was also a time when private therapies would not have been an option. I didn't love my children more when I was putting them through private therapy than I did before I put them through private therapy. My life circumstances were, however, different.
Mm. Yeah. That was one of the best moments of Biz Buddy over this year, I feel like.
Well, and I don't know because I actually went and I asked. So I have a few clients who, do kind of coaching slash consulting. And so I asked them. And one of them had been a fairly new client of mine at the time. And I said, so what would you say? And it was right after the session where, the question came up and the person kind of just dodged it. And, was wanted to tell their rags to riches story instead. So I asked this person said, well, the first thing I would say is, okay, my assumption is you have enough food for today because we're having this conversation.
Yeah.
I'm going to guess you probably have enough food to the end of the week. So my first question is, are we talking about food for next month? Are we talking about rent for next month? Are we talking about a car? Like what is our level of need? She's like, and then my second thing I'm going to tell you is that the first thing you need to do is you need to stop paying for experiences like this one. Like, I don't care that this is $1,000 session that I get, that I offered for $99. You need to stop buying this because $99 times 10 adds up to 1,000.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So the first thing you need to do is you need to stop buying coaching. Like, you need to stop all spending to build the business because you don't have a business yet, because you're not able to make your needs met. Like, not saying that to be me, it's just you don't have a business yet.
Yeah.
So we need to get you in a place. But before we can talk about how to make money, we first need to stop spending. And she had this whole, like, you could tell that she had she had thought through this before. Maybe she'd given this advice before. She had a very clear process. And it was not about how she was going to close a sale. It was about how this person was going to get to a place where they could be around in a month, right? If the offer came around, or 2 months, or 3 months. Because her point was, nobody does any good if you give me your last $100 and your kids go hungry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I think you and I've both ridden through some changes in our revenue stream,
mm-hmm.
and we talk through it.
Mm-hmm.
And we both know like the circumstances of our lives. My scraping myself off the floor
Mm-hmm.
background that brought me into working in the same space with you.
Yeah.
I know about how you've got kiddos, and that is a very real responsibility
mm-hmm.
in this world. And and having somebody who to say like they're on your level, it's like, well, what does that mean? It's like they're in the trenches with you.
Mm-hmm.
They're not just like on the side, sort of peanut gallery.
Right.
Like, well, if I were you, I would and it's like, no, we are both actively like doing the things. We're not hustling to the point of like total burnout, although we've both been burned out at different stages.
Right.
But I would say that like I'm just going to kind of bring it back to like when somebody's looking for a good biz bestie like this to have conversations, they've got to be doing the same consistency in work that you're doing. You and I are never working on the same thing at the same time. That's not what it's about. It's not apples to apples kind of thing. But we're never not figuring out what we're offering. We're never not talking to people. We're never not fixing some website thing. We're never not, doing like and I think the struggle that I've seen with people who've come behind the scenes recently and they're talking about like, oh, I really need like community. I really need somebody to talk to, and I was also trying to figure it out because I was like, well, I feel like I have it. And then you and I started trading messages again about it. And I was like, what is it? I think we need to define it better.
Yeah.
What makes a good biz bestie? Because you see other entrepreneurs who are ahead of you out in the space, and you can totally tell some people are biz besties and they've grown up together in the space. And I really think it comes down to this like consistency of action thing. It's hard to have strategic conversations when somebody is putting down like the growth of offers through whatever totally legitimate means they are. But you and for some reason have like the same sort of pacing in life. And I don't know if that just comes from having the same kind of drive or the same kind of shared experience that we had having met
Mm-hmm.
behind the scenes in another coaching business, where there were a lot of times we did not really have a whole lot of choice on if we wanted to take a break or not. And I think because we share that, maybe we know when to hold space for each other to like, it's okay to like take an evening off, It's okay to like have
Yeah.
yourself. But also, even though we might take a break, we're still never like not building.
So I'm going to say a couple things about that.
Okay.
So the first thing I would say is I think part of why we have the relationship we have specifically is yes, we had this experience working for a coaching company together. And yes, we experienced the whole, entrepreneurs are the only people who work like 150 hours a week to make money while they sleep. Like we lived that life. But here's the other thing that I don't know that we always give ourselves credit for. We saw under the hood of thousands of businesses together.
Yeah.
We saw, we saw huge, like huge groups of students enroll as part of a launch. And very quickly we saw the groups that went full steam ahead, the groups that got stuck on start, and then the groups that, were doing an amazing job. They were going gangbusters until they hit a specific point and they stalled there. And then we saw the people who like pushed hard through. And a lot of it is in trying to do our jobs better, trying to be better and more effective. We would have conversations like, okay, so this person seems stuck, and like, this is my observation of it. What do you think? Oh, you know what? I'm seeing the segment of that in the ones I'm working with too. So it kind of feels like a cheat, right? Like we kind of got a fast track because though you and me have not built 1,000 businesses each ourselves, by my count, we had a hand in almost 3,000 businesses in our time together.
Yeah.
Obviously, not all of them are successful. A lot of those people probably aren't even doing that thing anymore. But that's a big volume of experience that, like, you don't get that in college. So that's the first thing I think that allowed us to get together and really start having these very strategic, but equal parts theoretical and practical conversations about business and what requires. Right. We also had the experience of seeing people attempt to collaborate at various stages. And we were able, again, because the volume was high enough, we were able to sort of, what I would call, because I have an ag background, like the herd start to segment itself, right? Dividing the herd. So we saw the people who sought out collaborations where they thought they got the longer end of the stick.
Yeah.
You and me have a really good spidey sense for that now, right? For the people who are coming to us for one-way partnerships.
Yeah.
We saw the people who did not have the confidence to actually play at their weight class.
That too, that is so huge.
And we saw them get taken advantage of. And we had to be the people who stepped up and said, no. That's not a partnership. Right? It's I love to quote Love Actually, a friend who bullies us is not actually a friend after all. That's what that is. And and so we had those conversations. And I think meanwhile, because you've got your like library data storage mindset, I'm a former journalist. So my husband always laughs that I am just like Google in like personified form here. We constantly consume data and information. We're always synthesizing it. And then we just can't help but spew it out in ways that make sense to people. Yeah. And you and me both learn from that loop. So when people are talking about, I want to find my community, the first thing I always tell them is, first of all, understand what true community is. You have to have the opportunity to independently consume information, right? Like it has to be one way to you, one way away from you. And then you have to have the opportunity to connect with other people around that information.
Yeah.
Right. So, you can't tell me that your YouTube viewers are your community because it's really hard for them to coalesce. I mean, granted, YouTube has made a lot of community advancements, but it's hard for them to coalesce and get smarter, richer, wiser around you, they still require your presence.
Yes. Yeah. I think it's so interesting that you talked about the consumption of materials because a couple of videos ago on the channel here, I had said out loud, I was like, Stephen King has that great saying, if you want to be a better author, you have to become a better reader.
Mm-hmm.
And if you want to be a better entrepreneur, you need to become a better consumer. You
Yeah.
have to be able to consume things. And I think one of the things that makes a really great biz bestie collaboration partnership is it's almost like a fitness level in a way. You and I are both trained to consume probably larger than the average amount of information, and we don't get overwhelmed by it.
Right.
And we kind of thrive on it. But when you're in an unequal balance with somebody where somebody's consuming a lot and you're overwhelmed by like one article, that's going to be really hard. The person on the one article is going to feel overwhelmed being around the person who's consuming a lot. The person consuming a lot is going to feel like they need more. And I think
Right.
when you're looking for a biz bestie, you've got to look for somebody who kind of walks at the same pace that you walk at and know that that is the perfect match.
Mm-hmm.
It's a perfect pacing partner. I hadn't really thought about it quite like that until you and I sat down to hit record here, but I think that
Mm-hmm.
that is a big part of it because we do share trend data, and it's because you consume all kinds of stuff over here and I consume all kinds of stuff over here, and then we meet together in the middle and we share what we've found, and we're rarely wrong, I have to say. They were pretty good
We
at
are.
it.
I'm always like, for better or worse, we're rarely wrong.
Yeah, rarely. Sometimes we're like, damn it, I really didn't want to see it like that.
Well, and I want to throw in one more item that I think people don't like. They they discount or dismiss for collaborations. We, you and me, client load wise, do not run in the same circles industry wise.
Correct. Yes.
So I work with an entirely, and I have an incredibly diverse industry set that I work with compared to you. Your folks are mostly in a similar industry. But so we have that. So we're both in two different industries, right? There's not a lot of crossover, and there would never really be much crossover between our clients. Mm-hmm. And you and me are both voracious in consuming and digesting information and trends from industries outside of our.
Yes.
So it's like I'm over here, fangirling over 5 different types of industries and what's happening, and you are too. And then we've got our clients. So when you and me come together, this is this amalgamation of what's going on in 30 to 40 different business model and industries and all of that into a giant jello salad from the 70s.
That's quite the visual.
That's what it is. You're welcome for that visual.
So great. I was just thinking this whole time, I was like, thank God you're willing to listen to Huberman's 3-hour podcast because I don't can't.
Honestly, like 15 minutes.
And he give me like the little summary in a little Tonya podcast. And I'm like, thank you. Thank you.
Just it's at the 48-minute mark.
So great.
48 minutes to 52 and you're set.
I have all the metaphysical videos, and I'm like, start at this minute. Here's where you need to watch the energy report.
And they're like, watch this energy report. And I'm just like, okay. And what are they talking about again? Oh, okay, yeah, now I got it. So we're talking about the moon. Okay, I'm there with the moon. Got it.
I think that might be the really big thing. I really wanted us to like get on for this month. This is going to go out at the beginning ish of July. We'll do another one in August. Mm-hmm. We'll start just like sharing the things we've noticed together each month, mm-hmm. so that other people can follow along, get the benefit of some of that, but also like for the entrepreneurs who tune in, like start to gain some awareness about like, mm-hmm. who is my true biz bestie. Like a label is great. I've got a whole bunch of biz besties and they all serve different purposes, but there's like this deep connection biz bestie thing that you and I have developed that is truly special. And I think it's the thing that most of the people that you and I hear from I think this is what they're craving.
Right. But they don't know it exists, Mary. That's why I am so excited about us doing these recordings, right? They don't know it exists. And even those who think it has to exist somewhere, they don't know what questions to ask in order to find it.
Yes.
And that's what we're going to help folks with.
Yeah, and it takes time. So, there might be some things that we discuss in a month that somebody can toss out to their, half a dozen biz besties that they typically talk with and start receiving the data back from individuals as they respond in real time and
Mm-hmm.
recognize who is your Mary or your Tonya so that you can like know that when you want to invest more in like that deeper collaborative space,
Mm-hmm.
you're recognizing it correctly and not trying to pretend that something is something when it's not, or vice versa, and you know all the good stuff.
Yes. Well, I mean, I think, what I would say is you can't make a pig into a platypus. And I think a lot of times that is what we try to do. We see somebody, we like them, we want to make them a collaborative partner, and they're just not there. Or our business isn't in a place where there is good, like you always talk about energetic alignment, right? For me, it's just like, sometimes you don't have the time and space to play in that way with that person, and
Yeah,
that's okay.
it's totally okay. And you can idolize somebody and you can still be like the biz
Mm-hmm.
Betsy with them, but recognize who you're not idolizing, but you're actually getting in deep with.
Right.
Because I think sometimes like I've fallen victim to this too in the past where I will idolize somebody because I'm like, oh wow, she seems so cool. She's talking to me. This is so
Mm-hmm. Uh-huh.
exciting. And then you're like, what very much out of this. What's happening? And you can start to notice better too. Like you and I have other people we talk with outside of our conversations, of course. And we know certain people who have certain sort of laser, genius abilities, and
Mm-hmm.
you can just get a lot clearer on it.
Yeah, no, I totally agree.
I would also like to point out this might just be my own head trash on today's recording. I was like, I don't feel like a very good interviewer or talker today. You know me, I was recording podcast episodes all weekend.
Mhm.
I think I'm a little talked out, and I just love that like I'm comfortable enough to show up and we hit record, and this is totally going to go up on the channel.
And the thing is, what I love is because I am somebody, again, the background I have, right? Journalism and public relations and all of that stuff. I'm like, okay, I'm going to tell you what we're going to talk about. I'm going to talk about it. I'm going to summarize it for you so it's all like easy peasy. And one of the things that I love about how you handle delivery of information, Mary, is you don't do that. You don't do the bullet points at the top, walk them through, and then summarize. It's like what you get out of this is what you're meant to get out of it.
Yeah.
And so that's part of why I think this conversation is so fun because this has been, I mean, I'm always relaxed around you, right? But I'm not feeling like, okay, like I have to give those like, the sticky statement, right? It needs to be a good quote card for social. I need her to be able to like shorten it into a sound bite so she can do shorts or reels or TikTok. It's like, we're just having a conversation, and business owners who are interested in this, who are hungry for this, are going to watch because not a whole lot of other people are doing this.
All right. Here's to a new series of
Yay!
videos.
I'm so excited. See you next month.
Thank you so
With
much for
fun.
hopping on. I will see you on WhatsApp, and then we'll see
Yeah,
everybody back here in a month.
sounds good.